Probably.
I have to tell you a funny story about yesterday.
I'd say that on, yeah. Okay. Everybody ready? Okay. Thanks everyone for coming again this morning. So joining me today again is Minister Dempster, Minister Haggie online, and Deputy Minister of Forestry Jamie Chippett. Of course, we are still experiencing a very serious situation here in Newfoundland and Labrador. And as everybody knows, entire communities have been evacuated and thousands of people have had to leave their homes while wildfires rage in their communities and in their backyards. Our provincial wildlife fighting resources, local fire departments, our volunteer community organizations have been working around the clock to protect these communities and support people who have been displaced. I do want to say a special thanks to our Director for Wildfires, who's decided not to take his family vacation at this time. I very much appreciate his decision. He's a very valuable member of this team, and I think it just goes to show how everyone is really putting the communities and the safety of our communities and our firefighters first and putting themselves second. And that represents everybody involved in this situation, and I think it really sums up Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. So thank you to him for that sacrifice for the province. Despite the serious nature of what's happening, we are continuing to see reports of people setting fires, and in some cases setting fires intentionally. I don't know the word that I can use to say how I feel about this. Beyond troubled and frustrated that this is reckless and irresponsible behavior. So as we said, we have taken decisive action to help address this situation. Yesterday, we announced we would increase fines for violating the forest fire regulations, and as I said today, we'll share the details. So effective today, new fines will range from $50,000 to $150,000. For a first offense, when a ticket is issued, fines will increase from $75 to $50,000. And imprisonment in default of payment will increase from 3 days to up to 6 months. For a subsequent offense, fines will increase from $150 to $75,000. Imprisonment for not paying will increase from 6 days to up to 6 months. Where there's a summons issued, a first offense, fines will increase from $500 to $50,000 to $100,000 range, and imprisonment will increase from up to 3 months to up to 1 year. For a subsequent offense, fines increase from a minimum of $1,000 to $75,000 to $150,000, and imprisonment in default will be increased from up to 3 months from up to 1 year. It's very clear that these penalties for violating the regulations needed to be higher, and everyone needs to take this very seriously, and I think it's very clear that the size of the increases and the penalties, including imprisonment, that we mean business, and we want people to listen and take this seriously. Increasing fines is one tool we have in our toolbox to protect innocent Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, their families, and their communities, which is why we have taken that step. I also understand, and I've seen there's a lot of information on social media, and some, of course, is true, but as I warned earlier this week, some is untrue. So I want to continue to encourage people to get their information from official and trusted sources, such as Government of Newfoundland and Labrador websites and social media, the Department of Fisheries, Forestry and Agriculture, and Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services. And I also want to encourage people to follow Dr. Fitzgerald's advice when it comes to air quality. In terms of the three fires we've been speaking about this week, the Kingston wildfire does remain very active and very smoky. New mapping this morning indicates it has grown again to 2,875 hectares. Most of this growth in the past day has occurred on the western side of the fire. Continued work on fuel breaks on the southern edge near Perry's Cove has been going well. There are 2 fire breaks being constructed right now, both of about 1 kilometer each. We have 3 water bombers, 3 helicopters, and ground crews on the fire this morning, and a 4th water bomber will be joining from the Martin Lake fire this afternoon. There is military assistance on site later today, and as well 20 wildland firefighters will be arriving from Ontario on Saturday. The Holyrood fire, crews have had another good day on the Holyrood fire with light smoke and a few hot spots this morning, but the ground crews remain on site along with a helicopter to provide bucketing. This fire remains approximately 22 hectares. The Martin Lake wildfire has increased slightly overnight, but it remains approximately 230 hectares. Again, very smoky conditions, and we continue, of course, to monitor the Bay d'Espoir Highway. Ground crews are working the fire line and overseeing structure protection. We have a water bomber, 3 tankers, and 3 helicopters on the fire today, and we are working on a fire break there as well on the north side of Martin Lake and Great Rattling Brook. The good news on this fire, it is better than we expected yesterday due to the incredible suppression efforts by the firefighters. We thought it might have moved around Martin Lake at one point, but that hasn't happened. And the dozer guards there will certainly help protect cabins in the area and protect further spread north. One last thing to note, we have had successful conversations with Quebec. I had conversations with Premier Legault earlier this week directly. We will have 2 water bombers tomorrow from Quebec and 2 more water bombers on Sunday, as well as a bird dog. So a massive increase to our air assets over the weekend, which obviously will help a great deal. So I certainly want to thank our friends in Quebec and Premier Legault for taking that call and sending some support to Newfoundland and Labrador from Quebec. With that, I'll ask Minister Haggie if he has any comments.
Thank you very much, Premier. I would like to echo your comments about thanking Red Cross and our duty fire officer, as well as the Salvation Army and Ground Search and Rescue for their volunteers. I think it's also worth pointing out at this stage that when it comes to resources, the federal government don't actually have any water bombers. They're all held by provinces. And in actual fact, in Atlantic Canada, of the 4 provinces, we are the source of water bombers and traditionally in the past have been helping others. So I think, again, thank you very much to Quebec, who seem to be pulling out the stops. From the point of view of safety, I've had representations from the RCMP who have serious concerns, particularly about ATVs on the trails in the area. These are hampering firefighting efforts. No one's trying to restrict anyone's access to the backcountry. But quite frankly, you shouldn't be really driving around in a forest fire zone. And it's would be a great assistance if you would actually stay off those trails in that area while these evacuations are on. The same issue is apparent with watercraft. They're in the way of water bombers. You really don't want to encounter a 415 at high speed on a Sea-Doo. You will not fare well. Nobody will. Drones, if they're in the air, then the water bombers can't fly. These are important issues. And we've seen again on social media people driving down roads and flicking cigarette butts out of their cars. This is gross negligence and now will be subject to fairly significant penalties. And we will be investigating. In terms of other news, I have had also communication from the Insurance Bureau of Canada. And for those people who have a fairly standard house insurance policy, many of them cover expenses that are incurred during a mandatory evacuation. So I would encourage everybody, even if they're registered with the Red Cross, even if they're having services provided from the Red Cross, to actually keep relevant receipts. The accommodations have been something of a challenge with the increase in numbers. That was part of the reason for the move to Carbonear Academy yesterday. And with a confluence of events, we're having a bumper tourist season. It is the height of the tourist season. And of course, the Canada Games are starting imminently. So there is a squeeze on for accommodation, but we're doing the best with the Red Cross. It is the Red Cross who will find you a place to rest your head. And their number, if you haven't registered, is 729-0921. There are volunteers at our reception areas. They are places of safety. That's why they've been chosen. The Provincial Emergency Operations Centre is actively coordinating the situation. We have Canadian Armed Forces military personnel in there now as part of the initial reconnaissance team who will actually be working on what other resources need to be brought in. It is stressful. is stressful for everyone under these circumstances. And if you feel in need of support, 811 is available. And if you would prefer something more personal, then there is Doorways as a walk-in service, which is available too. And we kept Doorways open, if you remember, during COVID, regarding it as an emergency kind of service. Stick at it. We'll get through this. We have done these kind of things before. And if there's any support that the federal government can provide, they have certainly been willing to do so, and I thank them for that too. So with that, Premier, I'll take my seat, as it were, and hand it back to you.
Thank you. Minister Dempster.
Thank you, Premier. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll try not to repeat some of the things that's already been said, but we already have had reports of recreational watercraft that have prevented water bombers from picking up water. So I think the fact that we've seen some hindrance to suppression efforts, it bears repeating, and hopefully that message will get through. Mental health supports, we know that there's a lot of fear, and despite the monumental effort, the heavy lift, the incredible stories, and the Premier shared some by so many across the island helping with these fire efforts, we continue to see in social media places like Hampton where fires are started in a pit and left unattended. You've got to give your head a shake and read that twice. So today we saw the Premier come down with a very heavy lift, heavy, serious consequences for what is a serious situation in our province. And I hope folks become aware of that, look at it and say, do I really want to have my family impacted by that through a $100,000 fine or 6 months in prison? That's where this have landed. My final comment, the Resource Enforcement Division of the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and Agriculture, Fisheries, Forestry and Agriculture encourages those. We continue. If you know anything, if you are aware in any way of suspicious activity, please call our line at 729-2192, 729-2192. My final comment, my Justice colleague mentioned ATVs. And I have to say it again, I've said it a number of times, if you are driving an off-road vehicles must be equipped with proper screening or baffling device to prevent sparks from escaping. Thank you, and be safe out there, everyone. Back to you, Premier.
Thank you. And I'll just make one more comment before we open it up to questions. Obviously, we don't want people starting fires. Because we are losing communities, we're having people evacuated. It's a very troubling situation. But we do have a finite number of assets to deal with this. And just if you look at numbers, I know when we started this week, we talked about over close to 200 fires already this summer. But just in the past week, we've had 28 fires other than these three and other than Chance Cove and Musgrave Harbour. 28 fires in the last week that we've had to deal with. And those are ones we're not talking about. They all require firefighters. They all require resources. They all require hard work. People are stressed and tired as is. The more fires that crop up, the more strain on resources are going to be, and the more risk the province will be at. So please do what you can. Don't break the rules. Don't break the regulations. But even if you're following the rules and regulations, just take a second thought about what you're doing and can it cause any negative consequences to the province. I just really ask all of us to come together and make sure that we're protecting our neighbors.
When you say fires are being intentionally set, are you talking about like beach bonfires or something else?
I mean, Minister Dempster just mentioned one there that was, I believe, reports are that was intentionally set. I understand, just as I was on my way in here for this, that there had been some calls to the St. John's Regional Fire Department about bonfires as well. And that my point, too, is there's unintentional consequences of people's legitimate actions that they need to be careful of.
Could you elaborate on what that intentionally set fire was? What happened there?
Well, I was referring to a fire that was set in a pit and left unattended, was the reports that came into me directly. I'm inundated with emails, and I'm trying to direct folks to our Resource Enforcement Division. That was in Hampton. In Brigus, I had an email sent to me of somebody that was just next to 2 doors down where there was a fire going. And people are very scared. There's serious consequences. People are leaving their homes not knowing if they're going to have a home they maybe lived in their whole lives to return to. So it is really baffling to know that those reports still continue to come in, given what our province has been dealing with since mid-May, really, and it's continuing to grow.
On the fines, so between 50,000 and 150,000, how did we arrive at those numbers, and why did you decide to go that high with those?
So we looked at other fines, I guess, across the country. We certainly looked at where ours were, and they were incredibly low. And that's not surprising given the fact that, you know, wildfire season like this certainly wasn't contemplated when that legislation was drafted. I mean, times change. And here we are now. I think it was definitely appropriate to increase the fines by a serious, significant amount, not only to send a message that we mean business, but to punish individuals in the event that they do break the regulations. So, you know, those laws and those penalties always have several factors into why we arrive where they are, and it's for deterrence and for punishment.
You mentioned the watercraft that were potentially blocking water bombers. Are there any fines or consequences that could be associated with that kind of activity?
Right now, we're just asking people that's been relatively new information to the department, and we know that the recreational cod fishery, et cetera, is happening. So we're just asking people, if you see water bomber activity, just move to another location.
Why aren't ATVs being banned, though, on the trails if we're so concerned about how they could start a fire so easily?
This is what we decided to do right now. As I said yesterday, I think the important thing and the right tactic is to focus on people who are being negligent or intentionally setting fires. There is a balance between the innocent Newfoundlanders and Labradorians who are safely enjoying their summer, walking in the woods, using their ATVs. You know, and you have to remember in Newfoundland and Labrador as well, ATVs aren't just recreational vehicles. They're used in communities to get around. So to just do a blanket ban on that, there would be certain consequences that could lead to serious situation as well. I mean, people need their ATVs to, like I said, to get around the communities, to get to their medical appointments, to get to work. Newfoundland and Labrador is very much still in rural parts of the province using vehicles like ATVs. So every decision you make has can have potential negative consequences as well.
But what about in the areas where the fires are out of control?
They're evacuated areas. So if someone's on an ATV in an evacuated area, we have another issue.
What's the punishment for them there?
Under an evacuation order?
Yeah, because we were talking about how ATVs were driving in areas and then preventing crews from getting to certain areas. So what's the punishment for them then? So
the punishment for being in an evacuated area, I'm not sure what the punishment is, but I'm very confident that people have listened to the evacuation order. The authorities in wherever evacuation order has certainly put their lives at risk to make sure that everybody has been out of the communities, and we feel that, my understanding as of now is that everyone has been very compliant with that. Yeah.
What would be,
go ahead.
Thanks. What would be your one message to the people of this province? How important it is to not light a fire right now?
My first message, I don't know how I can stress how important it is. I mean, you just look at a community who has had to go through this, and now we have a number of communities and thousands of people who are affected by forest fires. Some which I'm sure were not intentionally started. I mean, you know, there's environmental factors that are going into this. We have hotter summers, we have drier summers. And as I said, so anyone who is thinking about doing things, whether they mean to do it as a joke or whether they don't understand that the consequences that can happen, everybody just needs to think about their actions throughout the summer and throughout the remaining period as we go through this serious wildfire season. Newfoundlanders and Labradorians care about each other, I can tell you that for sure, and everybody knows that. And you don't have to go very far to talk to these volunteers about what they're doing and the efforts that they're putting in to help their neighbors. So yes, there are people who potentially are doing this on purpose, and there are people who are potentially doing it by accident. And whoever you are, all of us just need to take a second thought before we do anything that could put our neighbors and communities at risk. And I'm asking, as the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, for everybody to listen to that message. Take that second thought before anything is done, and think about the consequences of what you can do. And I know in Newfoundlanders and Labradorians' hearts, I know we're up here There's a little bit of anger and frustration, and we are not speaking to 99.99% of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. We really aren't. We are the best people on earth. We are the nicest and kindest and most welcoming people on earth. We're welcoming thousands of athletes and volunteers from across the country tonight. And I can tell you they couldn't be more excited that this is the province that's hosting the Canada Games. And we will show them a good time, and they will enjoy it here, and the games will be great. We'll continue to monitor the safety of the athletes, of course. But let's just all pull together. We did it during COVID better than anyone in the world, probably, and thanks to Minister Haggie for that. And we'll get through this, as Minister Haggie said, but let's get through it with minimal downside.
There are heat warnings out, across the province. It's going to be a really hot weekend. Firefighters, they have to carry a lot of equipment with them. What's being done to make sure that they're kept safe, and especially from the heat now over the next couple of days?
They have made the brave decision to become firefighters, and no one guarantees their safety. But they do it anyways. They run into the fires while people and pull people out of fires, and I thank them for that effort. And as we've seen over the last few days, their efforts have led to these fires not growing, and their efforts have led to structures not being lost. And whatever they need, we want to give them rest, we want to give them breaks, we want to make sure they're fed and they have enough water and that sort of thing. We're there for them in that situation.
What does that look
Premier,
like?
if I could just add to that, there are support stations, forward bases, if you like, where province sets up to provide support, particularly to provide hydration and rest areas. The federal government, with the Coast Guard, will be supplying extra trailers to allow those firefighters to be rotated in and out and to have rest periods and to have adequate hydration. If you recall, when the Bay d'Espoir fire was on a couple of years ago, in actual fact, the Lion Maxims camp was used in such a way. So we do pay attention where we can to supporting the physical well-being of the firefighters. And again, I would echo the Premier in thanking them for the hard work that they do.
What's the plan for, or do we have any updates? Last we heard yesterday was that the Canada Games were still going ahead, no cancellations, no delays, and that no venues would be changed because of the smoke. Where do things stand now, though, with that? Is that still?
Yeah, so I think it is a day-by-day analysis. I don't think they're going to make a decision today about what they're going to do on Wednesday. That would be irresponsible. I heard from Minister Hutton this morning. He's meeting. All the tourism ministers from across the country are here for meetings as well. And I know that they're all on the same page, is that this needs to be monitored and make sure safety first.
I had a question sent to me earlier from someone wondering about the Holyrood fire. That hasn't changed in size, and we've heard that crews have been making good progress on it. So they're wondering why that fire hasn't been downgraded in any way.
Yeah, I'll let Jamie speak to it, but of course, before any decision to downgrade it and to let people back in their homes, we want to be 100% sure that it's the right move. We don't want to send people back in this morning and then take them out tonight. Yeah.
The only thing I add to that is that it is an ongoing discussion, but as the Premier said earlier, there are lots of hot spots, and while the public's probably not seeing big flames and so on, fires burn deep into the ground, so there's a considerable amount of work by ground crews to make sure that that fire's out or under control before we change the status.
Sort of one more question. I know that the St. John's Regional Fire Department said there were 6 bonfires overnight that they were called to. Do we know how many fires were intentionally set? Like the calls that you've been getting, just to get a sense.
No, I think we're seeing reports, and we obviously look at the reports to see the accuracy of them as well. But it's very clear, as Minister Dempster said, she's getting lots of reports. So, pardon the pun, but where there's smoke, there's fire. It seems very confident thing to say that people have been setting fires. In terms of the numbers and whether they were intentional or not, that does take some analysis, so I don't have that here now. Yeah. Okay, thank you, everybody. Stay safe, please.
Hello, I'm Deanna Sumanak-Johnson. Arthi Pole is away. Welcome inside the CBC newsroom. And she did it. Canada's Victoria Mboko has given the country and the tennis world a Cinderella story for the ages. The 18-year-old from Toronto won her first professional title in spectacular fashion, and it all happened in front of a sellout crowd of adoring fans in Montreal. Mboko defeated